Professor Rudrangshu Mukherjee, who is ready to enlighten us with his vast wealth of knowledge and experience.
Today we have amongst us a great historian and a prolific speaker, Mr. Dr. Rudrangshu Mukherjee, who will enlighten us on the very selected topic relating to both Rabindranath Tagore and M.K. Gandhi, and open up many pages of history in front of you.
I learned from Professor Rudrangshu Mukherjee in his lecture 25 years ago that history is never static. It is continuously developing, it is evolving, it is dynamic, and that dynamics has to be understood through scientific understanding of history. And that is what he said about in that lecture, elucidating that with a lot of examples, and that was tremendously touched my heart. That was beautiful, and he is with us today.
I would like to thank our CEO sir, a special thanks to you sir, for your kind support in the organization of this very special lecture to be delivered by Professor Rudrangshu Mukherjee, an internationally acclaimed scholar and one of the foremost historians of our country.
I'm a bit overwhelmed because I've never received so many accolades in such a short time. It's a great privilege to come and speak to all of you, and thank you for being here on such a firm and ready date. It's also good to be back because after a long time I've got to see two old friends, Praveen Roy, Pravita as I call him, and Sima Sahu, who I've known for a very long time. So you've heard a bit about what I'm going to say, and I'm sure all of you are aware of these two individuals, Gandhi and Rabindranath Tagore. I want to just make one point, because this lecture is being delivered in Calcutta. I will not refer to Rabindranath Tagore as Tagore, as he is normally referred to in non-Bengali circles. In Bengali circles in Calcutta, he is always called Rabindranath. So I will refer to him as Rabindranath throughout my talk. Both these individuals were born within few years of each other. Tagore or Rabindranath in 1861 and Gandhi in 1869, in different parts of India, far apart. It will always remain a mystery. No historian, no scholar can ever explain how two such titanic individuals could be born within the same decade in the same country, just as no historian has been able to explain how two geniuses like Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo were born in Florence within a few years of each other. But the two of them met for the first time in March 1915. Even though they were born in the same decade, they met only in the second decade of the 20th century. By this time, both of them were famous. Rabindranath had won the Nobel Prize, the first Asian to do so, in 1913, and Gandhi had made a name for himself, a global name for himself, by leading a very novel form of resistance against oppression and racial discrimination in South Africa, a form of resistance that was entirely based on non-violence or ahimsa. Their views were, by this time when they met, their views were formed, many of their views things were formed, but they were also evolving. Even though they met for the first time, they knew of each other. They knew of each other and they knew of each other's views. And this is where the intermediary role of another very important but much neglected individual in modern Indian history becomes very important, and that individual is called Charles Freer Andrews, who is known to us in India as Dinabandhu Andrews. I'll spend just a few sentences on Charlie Andrews, as he was often called. Gandhi always called him Charlie. And interestingly, Andrews, I think, is the only person who called Gandhi Mohan. He didn't say Mohandas. When he wrote or spoke to Gandhi, he said Mohan. Charlie Andrews came out to India as an Anglican missionary. He was trained in the University of Cambridge. But in 1913, he first encountered in a meeting in London a reading of the translations of Rabindranath's poems in Gitanjali, and that attracted him to Rabindranath. So one of the first persons he came and met in India was Rabindranath himself, and then later he used to teach in St. Stephen's College. He gave up that teaching job and devoted himself to teaching in Shantiniketan, very close to very close associate of Rabindranath himself. And when Charlie died rather untimely in 1940, Rabindranath recollected that he used to come and see me every morning. He would hug me, embrace me, and then just utter one word. He used to say, Gurudev. And then Andrews would walk away, and Rabindranath said, I used to see him walking away, his dhoti trailing in the red sand, red mud of Shantiniketan, and he said, there goes the Shabdashi. So that was the calling Charlie, Mohan, and then this is the relationship with Rabindranath. So through Andrews, Rabindranath got to know about Gandhi, Gandhi's views, Gandhi's activities in South Africa, and through Andrews, Gandhi got to know about Rabindranath's views and Rabindranath's great experiment in Shantiniketan in the field of education. Now that is the entry point. In late 1914, Gandhi decided that he would pull out his stumps in South Africa, completely uproot himself from South Africa and return to India with his family, everybody. There was one problem which he had to solve. That is, where he lived in South Africa, he had built a kind of an ashram in South Africa. It was called the Phoenix Farm. A lot of students, a group of students, not a lot, a group of students, girls and boys, mostly boys, used to study there. And what would happen to them? This was the problem Gandhi faced. In all good conscience, he couldn't just pull out of South Africa and leave these students completely alone. So he was looking for a place, a suitable place, where he could place these students. And Andrews said that I know about Phoenix Farm and I know about Gurudev's institution. The best place for these boys would be Shantiniketan. Send them to Gurudev. And that's how these boys came to Shantiniketan. And this happens in early 1915, January, and Gandhi comes in February to see how the boys had settled down in Shantiniketan. When he arrives in Shantiniketan, Tagore was away, he was in Calcutta, and Gandhi couldn't stay very long because the day he arrived, the next day, he got the information that his political mentor in India, Gopal Krishna Gokhale, had passed away. So Gandhi left in a hurry, promising that he would be back very soon. And he came back, as I said, in March 1915 and spent some time in Shantiniketan. This is the first encounter between these two individuals who already knew of each other and knew of each other's views. But before I go to this encounter is important. Once the boys had come to Shantiniketan, Tagore wrote a letter. Rabindranath wrote a letter to Gandhi. This letter is important, so I'm going to read it out to you. This is the first of many letters that they exchanged. This is Rabindranath writing to Gandhi. That you could think of my school as the right and the likely place where your Phoenix boys could take shelter when they are in India has given me great pleasure. And that pleasure has been greatly enhanced when I saw those dear boys in that place. We all feel that their influence will be of great value to our boys, and I hope that they in their turn will gain something which will make their stay in Shantiniketan fruitful. I write this letter to thank you for allowing your boys to become our boys as well, and thus form a living link in the sadhana of both our lives. Apart from the gratitude that is being expressed in this letter, I'd like to draw your attention to Rabindranath's deliberate use of the word sadhana. He is telling Gandhi that we are both engaged in different ways in a sadhana. The word is not translatable in English. Sadhana is a Sanskrit term. It can mean a lot of things from meditation to engaged endeavor and range within those two meanings. So both of them were engaged in sadhana. Just as a passing aside, this is also a very telling comment. In 1929, jumping a bit, I'll come back to the chronology in a moment. This is an extension of this sadhana that I'm talking about, I'm referring to. In 1929, one of Gandhi's very close associates, Mira Behend, she was called. Her real name was Madeline Slade. She was an English woman. Her father had been an admiral in the Royal Navy, and she had given up her English privileged background to come and work with Gandhi in Sabarmati. And when she came to Sabarmati, Gandhi didn't call her Madeline, he called her Mira, and she became Mira Behend to everybody, and that's how she is famous in Indian history, at least. Mira Behend wrote a letter to Rabindranath, and she said, "What is your relationship with Bapu?" Gandhi was called in his ashram as Bapu. What is the relationship with Bapu? Do you have any differences with him? What is the nature of those differences? That kind of a letter. Trying to know the relationship between Gandhi and Rabindranath. And Rabindranath wrote back to say, these words again are very significant and moving. He said, Mahatma Ji is the prophet of tapasya. Mahatma Ji is the prophet of tapasya. I am the poet of Ananda. I am the poet of Ananda. So tapasya and Ananda. If you think about it a little bit, the implications of what Rudrangshu is saying, tapasya leads to a form of divine ecstasy. Ananda also leads to a form of divine ecstasy. That is their sadhana. To come back to the chronology, that first meeting was also a very cordial meeting, but also a meeting that brought out to the surface one of the major points of disagreement and difference between these two individuals. Before I come to that disagreement, let me emphasize what has already been said before me, that they became from 1915 till Rabindranath's death in August 1941, extraordinarily close friends. Always Mahatma Ji, always Gurudev. They did not refer to each other in any other form. It was a relationship informed by profound mutual respect, in spite of the disagreements. And I'll have to speak a little bit about the disagreements. So, the first disagreement occurred in that very first week that Gandhi spent in Shantiniketan. And what was this about? Gandhi noticed as he walked around Shantiniketan, seeing everything, he noticed that there were staff who cooked the food. There were staff who made the beds for the students, who did the cleaning. And he also noticed, much to his dismay, and this is well recorded by other early students of Shantiniketan, that the students maintained a very clear caste distinction. Mukherjee, the artist, the semi-blind artist about whom Satyajit Ray made an unforgettable film called The Inner Eye, was one of these early students who recorded this class distinction. And in his autobiography, Mukherjee says, first day, they used to sit on the floor and eat. And he sat down. He found an empty place and he didn't know the custom, nothing. First boy, new boy. And he sat down and the boy next to him said, I'll say it in Bengali and translate it for those of you who don't know Bengali. Said, "Tui edike keno boshechish?" So, he said, "Jaiga phanka ache boshechi. Why are you sitting on this side?" He said, there's a place here, I've sat down. So the boy who was speaking to him said, "Odike giye bosh. Tui to Bamun. You're a Brahmin, Banerjee. Odike giye bosh." So Binodbihari said, "Keno? Why?" He said, "No, odike chalta bhalo." So there was a distinction among castes. So Gandhi noticed it. And Gandhi being Gandhi, he went and told Rabindranath, "What is going on? Why do students have staff? Why do you not give an order that there are not going to be any caste distinctions among students? It's your institution. It's within your powers to give such an order and remove these things." So Rabindranath said, "Yes, I could do it. I'm not denying it. I also do not like these distinctions. But I am not going to impose anything, because I believe that discipline should not be imposed. Discipline should emerge from within an individual. It's an internal decision arising out of an individual's experience that should lead to discipline. If the students realize that caste distinctions are bad, wrong, if they remove them themselves, I'm very happy, but I'm not going to impose it. So Gandhi then said, okay, but do you mind if I teach the students how to do their own work and remove the staff element? That they should cook their own food, clean their own rooms, clean their own toilets, make their own beds, etc., etc. So Rabindranath said, go ahead, do it. Gandhi said, but this is how an ashram should work. You think of Shantiniketan as an ashram. This is how an ashram should work. So Rabindranath said, feel free, if you can persuade the students to do it, do it. And Gandhi started that, and it became the practice in Shantiniketan over the years. So I want to point out the difference. We will have to come back to this, particularly this aspect of discipline being an internal thing rather than discipline being something that is imposed. This remains a lifelong disagreement between these two individuals. Underlying many of the disagreements that existed between these two individuals was this idea of what constitutes discipline. I'll have time to elaborate a little bit about this. What were their disagreements? What are the main subjects on which they disagreed? Discipline is one, but as a kind of a different manifestation of this broad theme of discipline, Rabindranath objected to Gandhi's imposition of the charter during the first phase of the Indian national movement. Rabindranath's argument was that you are making something into a symbol. Symbol or symbolic representation will not lead to a substantive independence. You are also imposing this. Then he went on to say that I read that every time you launch a movement, mass movement, this has all been written 1920, 21 and thereabouts. The non-cooperation movement has already begun, and Rabindranath, I read everywhere that you give a set of instructions, of how the movement should be conducted, how the volunteers who are or the satyagrahis, as Gandhi called them, how they are supposed to behave or should behave. Not only that, even in the running of your ashram in Sabarmati, you have written instructions and regulations about the conduct of affairs. He went back to the same theme on which they had first disagreed. He said, all these are the wishes of Mahatma Ji, and you are imposing your wishes on the people who are following you. You haven't stopped to inquire whether these are the wishes of the people who are your followers. There was a great encounter. Again, Gandhi had come to Calcutta during the non-cooperation movement at its height, and he, as he always did, whenever he was in Calcutta, he made it a point to visit Gurudev. And they met in Jalsha. And outside, because everybody knew in the courtyard of Joashako, the courtyard is still there if you go to the university there. Large number of people gathered. They were all shouting slogans and they were all burning foreign cloth. And Gandhi and Rabindranath were talking, and Rabindranath said, "Come out to the balcony." And he said, "See what is going on." Gandhi stood and watched, and Rabindranath turned to him and said, "Do you think this is ahimsa? Do you think you will be able to contain and control the violence that is embedded in these acts of arson?" Rabindranath didn't know at that point of time, and of course Gandhi didn't know either, that Rabindranath was being prophetic. Because a few months down the line, 5th of February 1922, if I'm not mistaken, this Joashako meeting happened in 1921. In the middle of 1921, September, October. February 1922. In an obscure place in Gorakhpur. I mean, if this incident that I'm going to describe hadn't happened, none of us would have even known about this place. It was such an obscure place. The place is called Chauri Chaura, in the district of Gorakhpur, northeast of present-day Uttar Pradesh, or even then what it was called the United Provinces. One border, the northeastern border of Gorakhpur, is with present-day Nepal. In Chauri Chaura, an angry mob attacked a police station and set it on fire. Look at the similarities: burning of cloth, setting a police station on fire. 22 people who were inside the police station, mostly policemen, were burnt alive. And the mob, the angry group of people who set that police station on fire, what was the slogan on their lips? What were they shouting? They were saying, "Mahatma Gandhi ki jai." With the name of the apostle of non-violence, they were carrying out an act of violence. Practically what Rabindranath had predicted. You will not be able to control this. Gandhi, of course, next day in the evening, he got to know that this is what had happened in Chauri Chaura. And the first thing that he did, he said, "I am no longer a part of this movement. This movement has turned violent. It has gone against one of the fundamental tenets of my life. I am no longer a part of this movement. Others can carry on the movement, but I am no longer a part of it." So, one facet of the disagreement is also regarding discipline, imposition, what constitutes ahimsa, and can one use violence for certain things and then try to contain it through a message of non-violence. This was one very major area of disagreement. The other happened 1932-33. I think 1933. There was a major earthquake in North Bihar, the district of Muzaffarpur. I've heard from my father that the impact of that quake could even be felt in Calcutta. It was so big. Those days they didn't make the calculations of the strength of the earthquake. They didn't have that mechanism or the technology available. So so we don't know what scale it was on the Richter scale, but it was very major to be felt in Calcutta and elsewhere. A lot of people died. And Gandhi was nowhere in Bihar. He was, I think, in Nagpur. Issued a statement, a very surprising statement. He said, "This earthquake is an expression of God's anger against a people who have turned their back on untouchability." God, in other words, Gandhi was saying, God was punishing Indians because of the practice of untouchability. The first person to react to this was Rudrangshu. He wrote and said, "Mahatmaji, I cannot agree with you. Let us keep natural phenomena as natural phenomena and try to understand or explain it through whatever scientific methods are available to us. Please don't bring God into this." And what is this idea of God that you have? That when he gets angry, he kills thousands of people. That's not my idea of God. God that we know, the God that you also know, is a benign God. A God that looks after human beings, doesn't kill human beings. So let's not put the responsibility of a natural phenomena on divine power. So they had an exchange on this. That exchange brings me to the one big point that I want to make. All these differences that I have been talking about, 2 or 3 I have mentioned, were carried out in public, not through some secret channel. They wrote publicly about their disagreements. Articles in Rabindranath's case, most of these articles were published in a journal called the Modern Review, which was published and edited by an associate of his, Ramananda Chakrabarty. And Gandhi used to read the Modern Review because he also had a respect for Ramananda Chakrabarty. And then when he read that some Gurudev had written something, he would respond. He would respond first in his journal called the Young India, and when the Young India folded up, he used to reply on the pages of his journal called the Harijan. So it was for everyone to read, whoever was interested. There was no backbiting, backstabbing, nothing of the sort. Open public debate, completely transparent. Completely transparent. And when, as in the case of the earthquake, it was done through a letter, Rabindranath published that letter. This is what I've written to Mahatmaji. And Gandhi, in his turn, also published what he had replied to Gurudev in Harijan. So, hence the importance of that word, public reasoning or public argument. They reasoned publicly. That's one very important point. And a very important point in a democracy. You argue publicly. You dissent publicly. Not only dissent publicly, the other, second aspect of their numerous articulations of their disagreements is that they never were acrimonious to each other. There was never a harsh word between the two of them. I disagree. This is why I disagree. This is my reasons for disagreement. Reasoning without any kind of abuse or acrimony. And once Gandhi wrote to Rabindranath, he said, "Please disagree with me. Please criticize me whenever you want to criticize me. I welcome your criticism because your criticism is an expression of your love for me. If you didn't love me, if you didn't respect my opinion, you wouldn't respond to them. Similarly, Tagore also said, please hit me on the head when you think I am wrong. I'll welcome it. This is how their disagreements proceeded. And this is what I mean by public reasoning. The absence of acrimony, the ability to differ from each other over certain very vital issues affecting the society, affecting the country, affecting the future of the country that they wanted to build. This is something that is increasingly disappearing from our life. The ability to differ without acrimony, without malice. The ability to say, I love you, I respect you, but there are certain issues on which I differ with you. I think it's a very, very important and profound virtue that we should all learn to cultivate, learn to nurture within ourselves, and also practice when we interact with other individuals, whether at the level of the family, whether at the level of friendship, whether at the level of public activity. This is one very important legacy and lesson that Rabindranath and Gandhi left behind for us. Their respect for each other was unalloyed. Visiting Shantiniketan 4 years after Rabindranath's death, this was his last visit to Shantiniketan. Gandhi was asked from the audience, so what were your differences with Rabindranath? Gandhi said, when I first met him, I began with the assumption that there would never be any agreement between the two of us. And then, as our relationship evolved, I actually discovered that we had no disagreements. I want to elaborate, and this is the last point I'm going to make. I want to elaborate what did Gandhi mean when he said we had no disagreements. Of course he had disagreements. I've just mentioned a few disagreements. What he wanted to say was that in terms of the overall view they had of India and of humanity at large, he and Rabindranath, as they say these days, were on the same page. I want to elaborate this, why I say that they were on the same page. Now I'm moving to the world of ideas, the ideas that these two individuals articulated in their writings and tried to practice in their lives. Gandhi's life, as you know, was varied, long and varied. But if there is one text that is central to Gandhi's ideas, I believe that text is Hind Swaraj. Written in 1909 on a ship coming back from England to South Africa. It was written in the space of 9 to 10 days on the ship's notepaper. It was written in Gujarati. If you look at the original manuscript of Hind Swaraj, it's there in the Sabarmati archives. You will find that the manuscript does not have more than 14 to 15 cancellations or alterations. So obviously Gandhi had the ideas already well formed in his head. so he could write it 30,000 words or so in one go in 9 or 10 days on the ship's notepaper. It was written in Gujarati, and as soon it was published first in South Africa in the journal that Gandhi edited there, called a bilingual journal called the Indian Opinion. Then he published it in India as a small booklet. As soon as it was published, the British banned that book. So Gandhi sat down and translated it into English. It was banned under the Vernacular Press Act of the British. So he translated it into English. Here's an important point for those of you who are interested in Gandhi. Most of what we read about Gandhi or by Gandhi are actually written in Gujarati. Even the great autobiography, The Story of My Experiments with Truth, was originally written in Gujarati. It was translated by Gandhi's trusted secretary, Mahadev Desai, into English. But for Hind Swaraj, Gandhi did not entrust anybody with the job of translation. He translated it himself because he considered this text to be very, very important. So even his most loyal followers were not given the job or responsibility to translate it. The second point, just to underline the importance of Hind Swaraj in Gandhi's own views. December 1945, he writes to Jawaharlal Nehru. Jawaharlal Nehru, by the way, was a critique of the Hind Swaraj. In the autobiography, Nehru's famous book and autobiography, Nehru writes actually, I'm quoting, Hind Swaraj is a dangerous book, or the doctrines in the Hind Swaraj is a very dangerous doctrine. It will take India back. It will not take India forward. It's a dangerous doctrine. Quote unquote. Again said publicly, in print. Mark that. Just like Nehru, Tagore, Rabindranath and Gandhi said everything in public, Nehru was also criticizing his mentor, the principal book of his mentor, in very strong terms, in print, in public, knowing very well that Gandhi would read his autobiography, as indeed Gandhi did. And so, that's the context. So Gandhi writes in December 1945, he says, you and I have consistently disagreed about the Hind Swaraj. Again, open admission. We have consistently disagreed about the Hind Swaraj. But let me tell you this, he says, he continues. If I were the last man standing, I would not retract a single word of what I have written in the Hind Swaraj. Last man standing, I will not retract what I have written in the Hind Swaraj. Written to whom? The principal critic of Hind Swaraj, Gandhi's chosen successor. So that's the centrality of the text. Why I am taking Hind Swaraj to be representative of Gandhi's views and to see it with what Rabindranath had to say about various things that Gandhi himself wrote about in the Hind Swaraj, where they converged. I've been talking about their disagreements, now I'm going to talk about their convergences. The Hind Swaraj represents a complete rejection, and I want to emphasize that word, complete rejection, 2 words, of everything that modern / Western civilization brought to India. Gandhi would strongly disapprove of the fact that I am standing here speaking to a group of students in English. and dressed like this, as I'm dressed, he would disapprove. Okay? Everything, every aspect. And then he went on to say, India has no reason to imitate the West. Why? Because India has a more long-lasting, enduring civilization than Western civilization. But that civilization cannot be found in the cities. It cannot be found in Bombay, Calcutta, Ahmedabad, wherever. To know that civilization, you have to go into the deep interiors of India. The real India, Gandhi said, lies in its villages, where individuals, families, groups have been living, have been functioning in the same way, following the same lifestyle for generations, for hundreds of years. And this is a lifestyle that is not based on competition and self-interest. It is a lifestyle that is based on reciprocity, interaction, and equal mutual exchange between individuals. He said, we have to learn, if we have to build a new India, an India that is free from Western influences, not just free from Western rule. Mark that. Free from Western rule and Western influences. One has to learn from these simple villagers. Forget the urban, intellectual, educated baggage that we carry. Go to these villages in humility and learn from them. He said, this is the double meaning of the word Swaraj. Swaraj did not just mean for Gandhi political independence. He said, Swaraj is self-government, political independence. Swaraj is also self-rule, the ability to rule one's own life. Swaraj. I can regulate my own life as an autonomous individual, free from dependence to any kind of Western imported institutions. He said, only when we achieve Swaraj in both these two senses, we will be completely free from British rule, not just by a change of government. How could one do that? He said, 4 ways. First, cultivate simplicity. Cut down your wants. Cultivate a life of simplicity where your wants are minimized. 2, if your wants are minimized, you have nothing to fear. Abhay, he said. Because what do you have to lose? If you have one shirt, somebody takes your shirt away, what do you have to lose? So, if your wants and needs are minimal, you have very little to fear, because our fears spring from a sense of loss, something that will be taken away from us. Abhay, number 2. Number 3, he said, if you have nothing to fear, nobody to fear, you have nothing to hate, nobody to hate. That is the basis. Non-hatred. Non-hatred is the basis of ahimsa. Where was Gandhi harking back to this when he said this? Non-hatred, non-cruelty is the basis of ahimsa. He was harking back to an individual called Yudhishthira. In the Mahabharata, in a very famous sequence, Yudhishthira is asked, what is dharma? And Yudhishthira's famous answer is, non-cruelty to all living beings is dharma. Now imagine the irony of it. Sorry to digress a little into the Mahabharata. Imagine the irony of this. Here is a prince who is about to go into a war. A massive war that will kill millions of individuals. But when he is asked, what is dharma? He says, non-cruelty to individuals is dharma. So Gandhi is saying the same thing. Ahimsa. Don't hate anybody. Don't harm anybody. And he said, if you cultivate these three as virtues within yourself, in practice, in speech, you will be pursuing the path of Satya, truth. And that will lead to a new kind of India, not a mimicry of the West. An India that is not a mimicry of the West. I let Gandhi be for the moment. Turn to Rabindranath. Lucky coincidence, born into great affluence, as you all know. Lucky coincidence, his father said when he was 22 or 23 years old, just married, his father said, we have very large landed estates. It was a zamindari family. We have very large landed estates in Khulna, on the banks of the Padma, present-day Bangladesh. They are not properly looked after. I want you to take the responsibility of looking after these estates. So, young man went off into the rural world of Bengal. And as you know, rural Bengal, particularly rural Bangladesh, is crisscrossed with rivers. Of course, the most important river being the ocean-like Padma. And he spent a lot of time, most of his time, on boats, traveling from one place to another. Sometimes he had to anchor his boat someplace overnight or even for a few days, and to look after his estates, he had to disembark from the boat and walk in the dusty park alleys of the villages. No roads, no paved roads. This is Rabindranath's first exposure to the real India. 2 or 3 important consequences followed. One was love for nature. He got to see nature in all her majesty. A glorious river, majestic moonlight, sunrises, twilight falling, the sound of dew on a leaf, flowers blossoming, changes of season. He noticed all this. And as you know, these themes keep recurring in his poetry, and especially in his songs. The approaching monsoon over a river. 1. Love for nature. He had first encountered nature at the age of 11, when his father, because he was unlike all of us in this room, he was a truant schoolboy. Rabindranath did not have a proper formal education. He was sent to schools, and then the school sent him back home, saying, this boy cannot be taught. While we are trying to teach, he stares out of the window. Sometimes he doesn't even come to class. So he was sent back. 3 or 4 schools, including the great St. Xavier's School, by the way, where he attended. for a few weeks or a few months. So, seeing that this boy was not an ordinary kind of student, his father, Devendranath, took him away to the hill station Dalhousie, where Devendranath took it upon himself to educate this boy in a unique way. So they used to get up at sunrise, say their morning prayers, and morning prayers in Sanskrit, and thus first started the learning of Sanskrit, particularly the reading of the Upanishads. That led to cultivation of Bengali, learning of English, and then music. Playing the esraj, learning the ragas, singing. Afternoon, young Rabindranath was left by himself to walk in the hills and the woods of Dalhousie. And sometimes his father would come with him, teaching him the name of trees, teaching him the name of flowers, flora and fauna, pointing out the various animals, foxes, jackals, sometimes even leopards that were in the woods. Rabindranath's first exposure to nature. And then as the twilight fell and darkness came, they used to sit on the terrace. And Devendranath was teaching how to look at the stars, elementary lessons in astronomy. This is how the boy was educated. And then the next exposure is on the rivers of Bangladesh, present-day Bangladesh. That's one very important consequence, is love, everlasting love for nature. He was to say later, two things saved me in my life. One was the love of nature, the other was the love of human beings. Second, this led to his first outburst, one of his very first outburst of prose creativity. Seeing this rural world, sometimes from his bajra, his boat, sometimes walking around, he saw the rural world. And he depicted that rural world in a collection of outstanding short stories, which was put together as Golpo Gucchu. It's my view, humble view, students of literature might disagree with me, that these are some of the greatest short stories to be written in any language across the world. So that's another kind of, different kind of consequence of this exposure to the reality. And third, he saw the poverty. He saw the wretched conditions in which the majority of the people of Bengal at least lived, what they endured, and how indifferent the government and the urban population, including himself, how indifferent they were to this poverty. And he decided that something had to be done about this. And how could it be done? It could only be done by the people themselves. The people had to be educated. The people had to be educated to understand that they would have to improve their own conditions, or their own condition, not depend on the government, not depend on the zamindar. If a well had to be dug for drinking water, the people had to do it. If a road had to be built, the people had to do it. Rabindranath said, the people must become aware of their own Atma-Shakti, their own inner strength. And it is in this period, just as he has returned from the rural world, 1901, in a volume of poems which is called Noivetya, holy offering, sacred offering. Number 99 of Noivetya has the following line. It's a prayer. Give me the strength never to disown the poor or bend my knees before the insolent might. Give me the strength never to disown the poor or bend my knees before the insolent might. I must stand by the poor of India. That is the real India. Gandhi was to say it later. Rabindranath is saying this early in the 20th century, growing out of his own experience, and also mark the emphasis on interiority. It has to come from within human beings. Join the dots with that first argument with Gandhi about discipline. Just as strength has to come from within, discipline, which also is a manifestation of strength, must come from within. And if Atma Shakti was cultivated and could be a part of what Rabindranath called the soul or the idea of India, we would have a different kind of India. What different kind of India? He articulated it in a song that he included in the second scene of a play called Raja, which is translated into English often, I think mistakenly, as the King of the Dark Chamber. It's King of the Dark Chamber because Raja, who is the protagonist, nameless protagonist, never appears on stage. One can hear the Raja. One can feel the presence of the Raja, but he never appears on stage. And in that second scene, there's a song sung in chorus. The song goes like this. I'll say the first line in Bengali and translate it. Amra shobai raja amader ei rajar rajotwe. Amra shobai raja amader ei rajar rajotwe. We are all kings in the kingdom of our king. If you are all kings, there is no need for a king. We are all sovereign individuals. So there is no need for a king. Every individual, the Hind Swaraj would say, would become autonomous individuals, not dependent on any institutions. That would lead to a new India. So, here are two individuals. Even before they have met, they have articulated their vision of India, which is running on parallel tracks. An India where the individual would be empowered through his own cultivation of his own strength and discipline, empowered to complete his own human fulfillment. That would be the attainment of Swaraj, not just the overthrow of British rule. That's one very, very major current of agreement, very profound current of agreement, which made Gandhi say, actually I saw that there was no difference between Gurudev and myself. We were thinking along the same lines. Parallel lines maybe, same lines. Prophet of Tapasya, poet of Ananda. Also, and this is the final point I'll make, they were both very devout devout individuals. What do I mean by the word devout? They believed in the most deep sense of the word. They believed in God very deeply. Gandhi once said that not a blade of grass moves in this world without God's will. And Gandhi never doubted the existence of God. Rabindranath's sense of divinity was immersed and emerged out of his reading of the Upanishads, which his father had imbibed in him, particularly 3 Upanishads. The Brihadaranyaka, the longest of the Upanishads, and many scholars say the first of the Upanishads, Brihadaranyaka, the Kena, and the most important, Isa. He read them again and again, referred to them again and again. If you look at his collection of essays called Shantiniketan, which is actually the addresses he used to give in the mandir in Shantiniketan every morning or every evening, you will find that he's consistently referring to the Kena and the Isha, particularly the Isha. And Brihadaranyaka also, the sense of interiority came from his reading of the Brihadaranyaka. And late in his life, in the late 1930s, when he is actually more and more withdrawing into himself, there are at least 11 to 14 references in his writings to one particular passage of the Brihadaranyaka. That's how deeply immersed he was. But that immersion of Rabindranath and that sense of piety and belief in God, unlike Gandhi's, was not bereft of doubt. Many of you know this poem. The poem is called Question, Proshno. A poem addressed to God. Just like the prayer that I read, which is say, give me the strength, etc., is addressed to God. So is Proshno, addressed to God, the question. And he says in that poem, era after era, you have sent your messenger to this world. And what have those messengers preached to us? They have preached the message of love. They have preached the message of forgiveness. But when you encounter individuals who have committed violence, who have rendered your world toxic, do you forgive them? Do you love them? তুমি কি তাদের ক্ষমা করিয়াছো? তুমি কি বেসেছো ভালো? যাহারা তোমার বিষাইছে বায়ু, নিভাইছে তব আলো, তুমি কি তাদের ক্ষমা করিয়াছো? তুমি কি বেসেছো ভালো? Doubt, and radical doubt. Here again he differed from Gandhi. His sense of piety, his sense of devotion to God was large enough to admit doubt, a radical doubt. And if you read his last poems, perhaps the greatest poems that he wrote, you will find that doubt. প্রথম দিনে সূর্য প্রশ্ন করেছিল, কে তুমি? মেলেনি উত্তর। বৎসর বৎসর কেটে গেল, শেষ দিনে সূর্য পশ্চিম দিগন্তে আবার প্রশ্ন করিল, কে তুমি? পেলে না উত্তর। No answer of who you are. What is the nature of the being? In his very last poem, dictated, not written, he said, যে পেরেছে তোমার ছলনা সইতে, সে পেয়েছে শান্তির অক্ষয় অধিকার। Life is full of deception, and those who can endure that deception get the right to an everlasting peace. So these are the two different visions, not just of India. I don't want to restrict Gandhi and Rabindranath to just India. They were speaking to human beings. This is their vision of humanity. This is their message, their legacy to humanity. It is our job, our responsibility, not job. I correct myself. It is our responsibility as teachers and students, builders of educational institutions, to live up to try and live up to that vision. I urge you, all of you, and I urge myself to carry out that responsibility. Thank you.
Shri Pradeep Kumar Agarwal is presenting, sir, with a token of appreciation